Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hafsa Yaseen, and today we are here again with the loopholes and failures in the policy making, the case of Pakistan. We have somehow already discussed that reason, what are the reasons of failure in the policy making in Pakistan. But today we will discuss the all of those loopholes that need to be that need to be resolved to basically implement a successful public policy in the Pakistan. So first one and most important is the relationship of hostility between the academia and the government. As we all know that generally public policy is basically defined as a different sets of government measures that are basically taken to address the difficulties which are faced by a nation. Public policy making in Pakistan has basically the three components. First one is that namely uh, then problems, then players, and then its policies. Like problems, players, and policies. What are the problems? What will be the policies? And who will be the policy making players or policy implementation players? So, problem can be easily identified, but ultimately, how you have to resolve that problem. Uh, it would be very easy if public sorry, if government basically provide all the basic information and all the information that are required to formulate a public policy to the academic institutions and let students and teachers participate in the policy making process, and ultimately they will develop a better and a policy that will be uh, successfully implemented, that can be easily implemented, because ultimately these are the students, like if there is a policy that is related to the education, and ultimately you involve the students of policy, like policy making or public policy students in the policy making process, ultimately they will be more able to participate, because at the end of the day all of these students don't get the opportunity to participate in the public policy, or they don't become the policy makers. So ultimately, if we involve each and every student in the policy making process by adding the academic institutions in the policy making process, by providing them the necessary information and asking them to make a short public policy for the state, this can really help to formulate a successful and a better public policy for the state, and that policy can be implemented. Uh, so this policy will basically achieve its objectives, it will be easily implemented, and ultimately you can even ask them to assess the policy, and through this we can easily save our implement assessment time. Then next is the commitments of the leaders. uh, in countries that basically support democratic process, countries that have political leadership plays a major role in shaping effective policies of public that basically benefit their people. So in Pakistan, inefficiency and interest of personals regarding political leaders could lead to a one-party policy making process. Policy of a policy making is primarily work for selected legislature at the level of the provinces and national legislatures. In Pakistan, almost 85 members of the parliament, 85% members of the parliament are illiterate, and they have no idea how to solve the problems. They have the little thinkings, and ultimately they don't have the policy making practices, and this even the structural leadership has limited knowledge, and even ministers have the no idea that what is happening in Pakistan, because most of the times they basically belongs to the elite class, and they don't know the issues which are faced at the ground level or at the grassroots level. What we need to do to resolve this issue, that uh, Pakistan has to uh, like now select the leadership that is the that knows what is policy, what is the legislature, what are the problems at the grassroots level, and how they can resolve these problems. We need to. So we need to make sure, firstly we need to make sure about their time limitation in the government, because they are not always sure about their time period in the government. So they always wanted to like refrain their own purposes and their own prospects. So ultimately, poor political support basically cause serious harm to the goals of the development related projects and social changes. So we have to make sure that if a democratic government is elected, ultimately we should let them complete their 5 years peacefully at least. The like opposition must provide them a peaceful playground to play their game, and and they shouldn't like it is the beauty of the democracy that the opposition basically point out on the negativities of the government, but they shouldn't point out on the things that are basically in the favor of public, but ultimately because of their personal grudges, they just never let them even implement the policies which are required for the state. Then there's the structure of the government. Uh, when Pakistan most important barriers within Pakistan, most important barriers for implementation and preparing operational policies considered is the agencies, but lack of debts, abuse of their authority, deception, administrative problems, uh, mistrust, like linking various organs of the government, representatives and politicians and their staffs have blocked the way for lack of communication. This study suggests that the achievement of the collaborative and collaboration that involves many actors, and that's another barrier to the process of the policy formulation. So what we need to do, we need to develop a strong governmental structure where government is sure, where when government is elected, they must be sure about their existence. A government structure must be of the kind that must be easily understandable to the general public. Each and every person who is in the government must know about their responsibilities. They should know that which departments are attached with us, and what they have to do, and each and everything must be clear. Ultimately, when the structure of the government will be clear, then the hierarchy of the government will be clear. Ultimately, the task will be performed more easily, and we can say more in a more better way. Then there's the scarcity of the resources. We all know that Pakistan is a state that basically that is basically a state with all the debts, and ultimately we are not even utilizing our resources properly which we have, and because of this, most of the times we couldn't implement the development policies. So what we have to do, we have to whenever a policymaker is formulating and implementing the policy, they must know the financial needs, procedures and human resource that will play an important role at all the stages of the policy making, development and success, and implementation required an appropriate access to the resources. So Pakistan has ensured the supply of resources for the implementation. So what we need to do, we need to reduce the discrimination in the taxes. Ultimately, most of the times, most people even don't pay their taxes, and because of this, state basically get lack of its resources. There is the inefficiency of the resources. So public policies has to achieve their preset goals, so they must have sufficient services for their construction and for the implementation of the resources. Then there is the role of bureaucracy in the policy making process. Policies that are in relation to the better governance has been used for greater rejection because of the policies made in advance. The politics of Pakistan is then held with the hands of interest groups, which include the small groups of the elected officials. We know them as the bureaucracy. And then there's the businessmen, there's the civil society representative, and the military. The result is a purpose-based approach to governance and institutional capacity building. Personalized decision making over energy has dominated the well organized institutional process. In addition, the ongoing reform of the political regime has had a determinantal effect on the policy making process. So the government we choose, it must know that what are their responsibilities, and ultimately how they have to consider the importance of the bureaucracy, and how the bureaucracy should consider the importance of the government to implement a policy. Because ultimately, unless or until bureaucracy won't understand the importance of the political leadership and how their role in the governmental structure, until or unless we can never make the policies which are basically in the favor of the general public. Because the bureaucracy of our state thinks that we are the permanent members of the state, and the politicians are here just for a term, for a specific terms. So they can't involve in the policy making process, and that is a wrong basically concept, or we can say that's not right for the state of Pakistan. Then there comes the economic policy failure. uh, Pakistan economy faces insecurity, rising commodity prices, poor pay equity, decline in jobs, declining public check and balance system, and thus this increase the poverty level. Instability in the government, or in the country, has a major impact on this on these all circumstances. Public financing continue to increase significantly under the control of the military and its technical staff, which include the military into the policy making process. So most of them are behind the global institutions of the finance. Pakistan has always been the basis for having enough executive working in the main banks and the economic ministries, and governments has to pay notice to the proposals which are presented by the ministries and the policies and their policies. Most of the times, what basically happened that even during the economic policy making process, so economic policy is usually failed in the state of Pakistan. Uh, because there is usually we don't even consider if our political leadership basically presents something, and or even our political leadership is more concerned about the policies which basically favored them, as a not as a politician, but as a businessman, or as a person who is investing in some business, or as a person who is basically investing outside the state. So these are all the lacks of the a garment which needs to be go through to basically properly implement, or to better implement this policies in the state of Pakistan. Then there's the foreign policy failure. Foreign policy of Pakistan has always been dealt by the military. It is supposed to be, and personal information transmission and decision making remain within the general headquarters that is to be considered. So they say that the politicians has no role in the foreign policy. So ultimately what we have to do, we need to consider the political role in the foreign policy making process, because ultimately by a good foreign policy we can promote the economy, we can promote the businesses, we can promote the trade, we can promote the investments, and when we will promote all of these institutions, ultimately this will help the general public, and when the general public will get benefit, and ultimately our policy, our state will be in a more better place. So what state need to do that we cannot say we cannot ignore the role of the military in the foreign policy, but we need to consider the role of the politicians in the foreign policy too, because they are the one who basically who are selected by the general public to represent them. They are the one who basically support the interest of the general public, and they knows that what are the policies and what are the things that need to be considered, which are basically helpful for the state. So next is the district government failure. uh, we all know that most of the times district government policies are formulated, the programs at the district level are formulated, local government structure is formulated, but ultimately there is no proper implementation of these programs, because uh, we no, don't believe on the formula of power sharing. Our the political leadership basically don't believe on the formula of power sharing. And if someone is working at the federal level, someone is working at the provincial level, they don't believe that we should share our powers and authorities to the people at the grassroots level, so we can achieve our goals better in the better way. So because of all of this, most of the times, if some government basically works to even make a local government, they totally fail to basically implement those policies. Then there's the uh, energy policy failure. Somehow we have caught up to this issue of energy, but ultimately we still have this issue in the state of Pakistan. We know we have the energy policies failures. uh, one Energy is basically one key economic factor. So a country which basically face this crisis, it means ultimately it is going through the enormous problems, which is a major source for the turmoil of its people. So what states need to do, that they have to utilize all the resources, all the water resources, all the wind resources to generate the energy. And where we should preferably solve this particular issue, because by resolving this particular one issue, we can resolve many other issues that basically cause the failure of the energy in the state of Pakistan. So all of these are basically the reasons which are basically caused uh, 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 which basically cause the failures of the implementation of the policies. So what state need to do, we need to basically resolve all these particular problems that are enlisted already. We need to understand the difficulty of the civilians. We need to basically uh, uh, resolve the competition between the services, because because of this competition within the services, ultimately people are basically start categorizing themselves. They consider that we are better than anyone, and because of this concept, ultimately they forget that what are basically they are appointed for, or they are recruited for. They forget the purposes, and because of this, the policies are not implemented properly. So these are all basically the loopholes that need to be considered while we are making a policy, and we need to make a policy successful. uh, thank you. Then we have already discussed the incompetence of the civil servants. The civil servants are usually incompetent about their work. uh, uh, Usually if they are selected, they are more in the era of the power. uh, they consider that we are the most powerful employees of the states. We are the permanent employees of the states. No one can basically ask anything about for to us. They even usually don't consider the orders of the political leadership, because they consider that we are the most powerful persons. And so we they should consider their responsibilities. They should consider that what are the purposes they are here, and what are the purposes they are here to serve for. So because of for many years of mistreatment, political mismanagement, and deceptions have made uh, Pakistan's labor force unable to provide effective management, basic public services. So, in the eye of the public, uh, civil servants are widely regarded as the reactionary and corrupt, while the bureaucratic process are rude and abusive. So, we need to resolve this particular issue. Then there is inter-services competition. Uh, we have seen that when we are working for one agenda, when we are working for one goal, we need to go in the competition at all. What we have to do, we need to work on a goal equally. We need to work on a goal without any mistreatment, without any mismanagement. So we need to resolve this inter-services competition, and to make the policies and make the public policies better, that basically works for the welfare of the general public. Whenever we are going to work on a agenda, we need to work on an agenda together, instead of considering that I'm the leader, so I have more powers, I have more authority, I'm the manager, I will be more powerful. Instead, we should all work together, and we should all perform our duties at our place in a better manner. Thank you so much. That is it for today. Hope you have understand the lecture. Thank you.